Hello, I'm Cheryl McCarthy. Welcome to One to One. Is a law degree worth it? With the annual cost of law school topping $100,000 at some places, and with student loan debt at an all-time high, many are asking that question. Meanwhile, predictions about the future job prospects for lawyers are all over the place. Does the country have a glut of lawyers, or is the future demand for lawyers likely to skyrocket? Here to discuss these and other issues with us is Sutha Sethi, who recently took over as Dean of the CUNY Law School. She'll also tell us why she thinks CUNY Law School is like almost no other law school in the country. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
The CUNY Law School, which is located right across the East River in Long Island City, has been around since 1983. You've described it as different from almost any other law school in the country. Why?
It's a great question, and it is true. It is different than almost every other law school in the country. In its founding mission in 1983, as you talked about, it was envisioned as a school that transformed legal education, and by that transforming the practice of law. And by that I mean who it was bringing into the law school, how it was training folks to be social justice lawyers, public interest advocates, and going out into the world and doing work that wasn't being done and preparing voices that had been previously underrepresented in the law to be leaders, to be social justice advocates, and to represent folks who needed it the most.
You went to Columbia Law School. How is CUNY's law school different from Columbia or from Western New England College of Law, where you just came from?
Sure. So I guess I won't speak so much to Columbia now because I'm not sure exactly what the law school's ethos is at this point. I graduated from Columbia over 20 years ago, and I think there was a strong public interest presence at Columbia, but it was certainly not the main pathway towards careers for most students there. Many of us, I think, were strongly encouraged to think about careers in corporate law or think about careers in government. And that's fine. It's okay for there to be a lot of different types of law schools in the world. Western New England, I think, is a very different type of law school as well. It was actually a law school that was founded over 100 years ago with only a night program, with this idea that folks who were historically underrepresented, meaning working class folks, had an opportunity for legal education. And it continues to do a lot of that work in Western Massachusetts and in New England. But that too is different from CUNY and its kind of larger mission, right? The idea of CUNY Law School being not just an access school in terms of who our students are, but transforming kind of the practice of law with how we go out there in the world and cultivate social justice leadership in the law. That's different than both Western New England, than Columbia, and again, than most other law schools in the country.
There's certainly also a difference in cost
Yes.
between CUNY Law School and many other law schools.
Which is remarkable. And honestly, one of the many, many things about CUNY that was very appealing to me when I was considering applying for this job as dean, the idea that you can go to CUNY Law School and graduate with significantly less debt, or perhaps for some of our students with no debt at all, compared to a lot of other law schools in the world. As you mentioned earlier, there are many law schools that cost either close to $100,000 or well over $100,000 per year. And if we think about the typical JD degree taking 3 years, that is a significant amount of debt that most people will have to take on. So the idea of CUNY with its tuition being so low, right, coming in at tuition and fees around $16,000, $17,000 a year, is remarkable because what it allows students to do is to pursue their path, to pursue their kind of dream career earlier, and not bogged down in the same way by the questions of debt that a lot of their colleagues across the law schools across the country are facing.
And you don't have to concentrate in trying to get into one of the big law firms where you get paid a lot of money.
It's true.
Right.
It's true.
How would you describe your students?
The CUNY law students are amazing. You know, I've had the benefit of 3.5 months on the job now and have been able to meet lots of folks through programs, through their orientation, through just informal conversation. And they are remarkable in the experiences that they have lived prior to coming to law school, the types of work that they have done. what motivates them to be in a social justice law school, and the type of work that they engage in as students and what they want to do afterwards. It's inspirational. And frankly, as an administrator who sometimes feels a little bit removed from students, it's energizing, and it really gives life to the mission of the school and reminds all of us why we do the work that we do.
Do they tend to be older and have a lot of them worked at jobs as opposed to coming straight out of college to law school?
So I think in our we have both a full-time program that runs in the day and a part-time program that runs in the evening. For our day program, I think that the students tend to be a little bit older than the national average, maybe by a couple of years, because they have had work experience or they have had taken the time to do something else prior to coming to law school. That is certainly true for our evening students. Many of them work full-time jobs and they come to law school at night, which is frankly amazing to me in terms of their dedication and time management. And they tend to be older by nature, I think, at every law school that runs an evening program, because you are getting such a rich variety of students with different life experiences, some of whom are working, some of whom have been family caregivers for a period of time. They just bring a real breadth of experience to what they do.
I've heard so many things over the years about what was happening with law school admissions.
Sure.
For one while, everybody was applying to law school, I guess because that's where you could get a highly paid job. And then they were going because you couldn't get a job. And then law school, there was a glut of law school students. And then they weren't going to law school. So what's been happening lately?
All of what you said is exactly right. So I think the last 10 years of law school admissions has been very volatile. I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a general upward trend, but that's after enrollments had declined really significantly in the kind of early 2010s onward. And so right now we have experienced growth in our application pool year over year for the last several years. It's kind of early days yet in terms of our current cycle. Most students do not apply to law school until later in the calendar year. And so we won't know what our next class looks like, but our classes for the last couple of years have been quite full, and we've had some wonderful applicants. So we feel, I think, grateful as an institution that we've had such a great pool of applicants.
Tell me just sort of briefly, what are the basic requirements for the JD at CUNY?
So like many law schools, CUNY is regulated by the American Bar Association. And so there's lots of different coursework and credit requirements that come with that. At most law schools, CUNY included, the first year curriculum is for full-time students is largely set. It is some required courses in a lot of the different basics of law. As you get further into your curriculum, your second or third year, you have a little bit more of an opportunity for elective courses. There's requirements for professional responsibility, for kind of in-depth writing requirements. And CUNY is nationally renowned for its clinical program, which really, I think, occupies a lot of time and energy, appropriately so, for our third-year students as they are getting prepared for the practice of law.
I'm going to come back to the clinical part. But people will often ask me, because I went to law school as well, and will ask me, well, what did you major in law school?
Right.
And I said, well, there's no major, because there are a lot of courses that are just required.
Yes.
There are few electives.
Yes.
But primarily it's the curriculum is set, and you only start to concentrate when you get out of law school. That may have changed a little bit, but that was certainly the way it was for me. Just wondering, I remember back in I guess it was the 80s, there was a movie called The Paper Chase.
Yes.
It was a take on, I guess the sort of the Ivy League kind of law. So I think it was probably based on Harvard. And the idea you had, you saw these students sitting in this huge classroom, and the professor was sort of a terrorist, and you sat there frozen, no lectures, but the Socratic method, everything is brought out by asking students questions, and you sat there frozen in fear that he's going to call on you and that he would humiliate you. Does anybody use the Socratic method anymore?
I think they do. I do think, I want to say up front, I think it's very different than what might have been depicted in The Paper Chase or some other movies as well. I think, you're exactly right that the nature of law school education continues to not be lecture-based. It is based on discussion and kind of group involvement and conversations about how law has developed, what it means now, and how we should think about it kind of critically and analytically, because the whole job of law school is to give students those tools that they'll need, whatever it is that they choose to do afterwards.
Right.
So I think the Socratic method, as it's used now, tends to be more of a dialogue between professors and students, and perhaps inviting other people into the conversation, so it less feels like an interrogation than a conversation. So I want to say that it's probably still there. I don't know how universal it is, but it's different than what we've seen in movies.
The CUNY Law School, as you mentioned, has been ranked as #1 in clinical law training. I think it's tied with Georgetown Law School. What is clinical law training?
It's a great question. I think, when I went to law school, I didn't know any lawyers. And so when people said clinics, I assumed it had something to do with healthcare.
Right.
And for everyone who's in that position, right, clinics are the opportunity for students to gain intensive practical lawyering experience by working with actual clients under the supervision of faculty members who work in specific areas. So, for example, CUNY Law School has a lot of clinics, including a community economic development clinic, including one that deals with immigrant rights, including one that deals with gender justice, and so, or healthcare, lots of different topics. And so students work in small groups as teams representing actual clients under the supervision of faculty members to work for these clients. So we currently have
handling real cases.
Handling real cases, so criminal defense cases, and doing wonderful work in the area of clemency petitions or other things like that. What that does is give them one area of law in which they are gaining a lot of expertise. And even if they choose not to practice in that particular area, the skills that they get from actual lawyering, interviewing, witness counseling, brief preparation, right, negotiation experience, they carry that with them, whatever it is that they do after law school.
Now, would the clients actually come to them on your campus, or would the students be working, say, with nonprofits who do that kind of law off campus, or would it be both?
It's both, right? It depends on the clinic and how it's structured. And I think this is true at many law schools. Some of them are ones where the clients are live and in person, and whether that's at the law school or at, kind of a local location. Obviously, this has changed a bit with the pandemic. And sometimes depending on where your client is, like if they are currently incarcerated, right, then there needs to be other ways of communicating with clients or going to visit them. And then there's some clinics that work in partnership with Legal Aid Society or other organizations where our students work both with our own faculty and with lawyers at Legal Aid on working on these cases.
When I graduated from law school, I did not feel equipped to handle even the simplest legal case on my own. I didn't know how. A friend of mine asked me, probably my last year of law school, to draft a contract for her, a simple contract. I didn't know how to draft a contract.
Right.
I didn't know how to write a will. I didn't know how to handle a house closing. I think I actually did a house closing with another recent graduate, and we had to go and find a handbook, I think, for legal aid attorneys who did it, because nothing had prepared us to know how to do it. I didn't know how to handle a landlord-tenant dispute. I gather you would argue that your graduates, well, are they prepared to handle the practicalities of lawyering after they graduate?
So I think that legal education as a whole has changed a lot since you and I went to law school in terms of having more of a focus on practical lawyering. I think that is a national movement. I think CUNY Law School was frankly at the forefront of that, and that other schools have been playing catch up a little bit because, again, this is kind of baked into the ethos of CUNY's law school to put students in a position where they can start to do that important work as they leave the law school. Now, that's not to say that they'll be an expert in every area of law that you mentioned, but at least that they're much closer to that, right? And that they have a network and the tools to start building the expertise in the areas that they're working in. We do have not just the clinical programs, but classes that help prepare students for that in things like New York practice or other kind of, the nuts and bolts classes
Right.
that help folks who are striking out on their own to either either be in a very small firm or solo practice. So I want to say that they might not be all the way prepared in all the areas you're talking about, but better prepared.
Another of my criticisms of some of the law schools is that they don't prepare, or they didn't, it may be different now, and you can tell me, prepare students to pass the local state bar exam.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, you paid all of this money, gone to school for 3 years, and then you have to pay another $2,000 or $3,000 to take a bar review course to prepare yourself for the bar. How much do they cost now? $2,000, $3,000?
They do.
So why don't law schools offer a bar review course in the last semester, or do any of them?
It's a good question. I think this too is a way that legal education has changed over the last couple of decades. Most jurisdictions now are part of what's called a uniform bar exam. So it's the same bar exam across the country, and each state might have additional requirements. Like New York has an additional component that it would like its graduates, I think, to be aware of. But I think the question that you're asking is really what we're doing in terms of preparedness for that. I think CUNY Law School does have a bar preparation course that it runs in its last semester. And I think we also try to offer more support for students in that period when they are studying for the bar intensely. We are currently trying to provide bar services, those kind of commercial bar courses that you're talking about to help subsidize and support students in taking those classes. We are also offering grants when we can to help support students with their financial costs during that period, where we want them to take bar studies seriously as a full-time job, but that means that they're not working elsewhere. So we're trying to provide support for them in that process in a lot of different ways. And we have mentors and faculty members who are committed to this idea that bar success is part of the job of the law school. And so we're trying to take that on and kind of work through how best to do that with our students, but it's certainly a deeply felt priority and commitment for us.
I'm happy to hear that there's more support for students. How do CUNY students do on the bar exam?
I think generally they do well. I think that it's been a volatile few years, I think nationally in 2020, in particular with the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bar passage rates were down across the entire country, and CUNY Law School was not immune from that. But if I think about 2021, it was bouncing back towards closer to our historical norms. And, the ABA focuses a lot on how many of your law students or graduates pass the bar within 2 years of graduating. And those numbers for CUNY Law School hover around 90%. And so we would love it to be 100%. And, certainly committed to providing support. But I feel like we are moving in a good direction in terms of supporting those students.
How about employment for your graduates? How are they doing, and what are they doing? What do they do?
So our students, again, with a different profile than graduates of many law schools across the country, are really disproportionately highly represented in public interest work and in government work. There's a smaller sector of them who engage in either large law firms or corporations, in-house counsel type of work. Although we do have some students each year who are doing that as well. I think their employment prospects are relatively strong, and part of that speaks to, frankly, unmet legal needs in a lot of areas in which CUNY Law School students graduate with expertise and interest in pursuing those careers.
I was telling you that what I've been reading about the job prospects for lawyers, just seems to be all over the board. It seems that jobs have started to go up. Well, I guess certainly after the pandemic was probably a tough time for those looking for work and for law firms, but that the number of jobs has been going up. But there still seems to be more law school graduates than there are jobs. I don't know. Do you think there are too many lawyers?
I would actually suggest that we don't have enough lawyers, and I know I'm biased when I say that as the dean of a law school, but we we can see how much unmet legal need there is out in the world. Wherever you are in the country, frankly. Here in New York, we see in issues having to do with housing, having to do with criminal defense work, having to do with so many aspects of life that we need more lawyers to help represent folks who don't know what their rights are, and even if they do, they don't have representation to help them. And frankly, across the country, even in rural communities, the folks who work on farms, the folks who need access to kind of equal educational opportunities, that's universal, right? And so I would argue that now more than ever, as we kind of are cognizant of all of the different social justice issues that our communities and our society faces, lawyers are here to help, right? That's the job, to be advocates and problem solvers. We need more of them.
I tend to agree, because while we have a lot of lawyers, the average person, either a middle class person, even an upper middle class person, not to mention, a lower income person who needs a lawyer, often can't afford one, because the fees are just too high.
That's right.
And so I think a lot more people would go to lawyers if lawyers were available at fees that they could afford.
I agree with you. And I think that there are movements in certain states to have people who have special licenses, limited licenses, to do kind of, paralegal plus work for individuals, because there's a sense of this unmet need, right? What that speaks to is the need for more legal education, more training to help advocate for those people in need.
Since you've been at CUNY 3 months, what has most impressed you about being there?
What continues to impress me is the mission of the school and the dedication that kind of shines through with students, faculty, staff, alumni, everyone, to what this law school is committed to and what it can do. This idea of helping to transform not just who is out there being lawyers in the world, but also what justice looks like, to advocate both for individual clients and for changing society, changing laws, changing policies, advocating for fair and just practices. It kind of sings through in classes, in programming, and everything that the law school does. And I know that was kind of the hype when I was applying for the job, but it is real, and you can feel that throughout the law school.
And you have said that you're interested in teaching students not just how to handle individual cases, but how to bring about structural changes in how the law is applied.
Yes.
Got about 3 minutes, and you can tell us your priorities for the law school going forward.
So I think a couple of things come to mind. First is I'd like to see us think about encouraging more of our students towards leadership opportunities. Like many CUNY institutions, many of our students come from historically underrepresented backgrounds in the particular profession that we are teaching, and that's 100% true for the law school. And so when folks come to law school, they're often thinking about getting through that 3 or 4 years and then what their first job might be. I'd like us to start helping those students think about a longer term horizon and becoming leaders who can really effectuate that structural change that you were just referencing.
So when you talk about leaders, what do you mean?
I mean judges and legislators and folks who are policymakers, heads of nonprofits, the people who are in a position to help move the law, move policy, move government priorities in ways that are fundamental. So again, not just affecting one client or one particular system, but really thinking large in a kind of large scale way about how they can kind of change the world to be a more just place. That's what I'm hoping for.
And what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about going to law school or thinking about becoming a lawyer?
I would say a couple of things. One is come talk to us, right? We're always happy to hear about people's interest in the law. I would remind them that you don't have to have a particular path or background to come to law school. What you need to come with to CUNY Law School in particular is the desire to learn, the ability to kind of think and analyze critically, and a desire to do good in the world, to help the public interest. That's who we are, and if that speaks to you, come talk to us and we'll help you think through what law school might look like for you. We need you.
I would say that having a law school, having a law degree is a real advantage in no matter what you pursue. I think it gives you a certain amount of confidence. If you get through law school, you can do all kinds of things. And they used to say it gives you the ability to argue either side of the issue, both sides of the issue with a straight face. But I think it's just a great basic form of education that teaches you how the world works and helps you work it.
I tend to agree.
So, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd like to thank Sutha Sethi, the new dean of the CUNY Law School, for joining me today. To learn about our upcoming shows, you can follow us on Twitter at 1-to-1 CUNY TV. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Cheryl McCarthy.